morning. Today we're going to explore the arc of belonging, how people who join us here may experience belonging very differently from the point where they first walk into this church for the first time and as they gradually knit themselves more deeply into the fabric of our community. I offer these words by Unitarian Universalist Minister Reverend Richard Gilbert as we begin our service today. We bid you welcome, who come with weary spirit seeking rest. We bid you welcome, who come with hope in your heart. We bid you welcome, who are seekers of a new faith, who come to probe and explore, who come to learn. We bid you welcome, who enter this hall as a homecoming, who have found here room for your spirit, who find in these people a family. Whoever you are, whatever you are, wherever you are on your journey, we bid you welcome.
I invite you now to rise in body or spirit and join me in saying our mission statement, which is printed in your order of service and displayed. We gather as a community to grow in character, mind, and spirit, and to transform the world toward fairness, love, and compassion. Please remain standing and join me in singing hymn number 358 in the gray hymnal, Rank by Rank. The words will be projected.
Good morning. My name is Bob Harris, and I have been asked to speak about my sense of belonging to DUUC as a new member. I started attending services in November 2016, and after taking the membership classes, joined in February 2017. For decades, I had been on a quest to discover my spiritual side. I was raised Episcopalian and even worked as an acolyte or altar boy during my teen years, But in fact, I had little religious training, and my parents were not enthusiastic churchgoers. Even in college, I felt uncomfortable with the formal rituals of the Episcopalian Church. And at times throughout my life, I attended congregational or UCC churches for a few years at a time. But something was missing. It just didn't feel important or meaningful. Now, for a moment, shifting gears away from formal religion, when I was 54, I went through an initiation weekend with the Mankind Project, a worldwide organization that exists to support healthy emotional growth in men. It is specifically non-religious, but there is a definite spiritual side to the work we do. In my 18 years with that organization, I came to realize that for me, spirituality has little or nothing to do with rehashing ancient legends or choosing to believe in supernatural belief systems. Rather, I decided it was about developing and living out my best values and helping others. Does this sound familiar? When I was employed, my focus had been entirely on my career and raising my family. I retired 3 years ago, and in retirement, one of my specific goals was to further explore my spiritual side. To that end, I took an online test to discover what my best spiritual path was. I scored 100% on Unitarian Universalism. Great, I thought. What the heck is that? So another goal in retirement was to use my skills and talents to do more to help other people and to make the world a better place. Again, does this sound familiar? After some research into UUism, I realized the church and I both define spirituality the same way. What this church stands for absolutely makes sense to me. After looking for the closest church to my home in Bloomingdale, I just showed up at church one Sunday in November 2016. I vividly remember the morning I first came to church. A man, I think it was Bob Wunderlich, opened the outside door for me with a huge welcoming smile, which made a strong impression on me. The people at the welcoming desk were friendly and enthusiastic and seemed happy to see me. During the service, I felt comfortable and engaged as Karen Linda Brecky conducted a service on the Tree of Life. After service, I ran into Dave Gorman at coffee, whom I had known as a work colleague for years, and we talked for a while. Then Steve Connett, whom I'd never seen before, rushed over and greeted me like an old friend, and we chatted for a while. When I left that day, I couldn't wait to return next week. I so quickly felt completely at home. This is unusual for me because I've always felt like something of an outsider, never quite fitting in anywhere, even as a child. This is partly because I am gay, so by definition, an other, but more so just due to how I was as a child, kind of bookish and shy and lacking confidence. I did well in my education and career, but on a personal level, I always felt like an outsider. As I talked to people at church and read the weekly church updates on email, I saw the many, many things the church does, all of which seemed like ways to plug in. I started attending the men's group, went to potluck dinners, participated in face-to-face a few times, picked up trash along the DuPage River with Dave Gorman, and just started showing up at events. I have done everything from volunteering to set up tables for the pancake breakfast to co-leading the New Covenant groups and attending the annual retreat. In all cases, the people I met have accepted me, been friendly and supportive, and just lots of fun to talk with and be around. Sure, part of it is because we have a lot in common. Intelligent and very open-minded free thinkers, if I may generalize. Each person I meet presents me with a new chance to meet someone well worth knowing. What fun, another interesting person. I have a stronger feeling of belonging in this church community than I have ever known. How did I get the sense of belonging? Partly by being in a community of like-minded people, but even more so by just getting out there and showing up and saying yes when someone needs something. I am thrilled to be a part of this wonderful community, and I feel like I really belong. Thanks for listening.
Good morning. I'm Karen Lindebrecke, and I'm a member here at DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church. I first walked in this church in 1993, soon after moving to Illinois from Tennessee. I was looking for a church community like the one I had at Tennessee Valley Unitarian Church in Knoxville, where I had found my community in a rather conservative surrounding neighborhood that was several counties wide of being conservative. That's where most of the professors were, was at the Knoxville Church, the Unitarian Church in Knoxville. This is the first church that I visited here in Illinois, however. After that, I went to the Hinsdale Unitarian Universalist Church. My new and very atheist husband at that time could not understand at all how or why I wanted to go to a church. And there's no way that I'd be taking any children that he and I shared to any church, temple, mosque, synagogue. Despite my attempts to educate him, and my mother's, by the way, on Unitarian Universalism, and that he would find plenty of other atheists and agnostics in the congregation, he refused to listen and found ways to prevent me from attending church. 10 years later, when our divorce papers were finally drafted, I made sure to include a phrase that stated that the children would be exposed to diverse belief systems and lifestyles. And I verbally stated in the presence of our mediator that I would like to take the kids to a Unitarian Universalist church some weekends. Since my ex-husband had the kids most Sunday mornings, this still did not happen. In 2006, several years later from when I first came here, I began again to seek a Unitarian Universalist church community where I felt I belonged. I visited the church in Oak Park. I visited the church here again, and I also visited the church in Joliet several times. In 2007, I was married to my wife here at this church, and in 2010, my daughter Shama was also married here at this church. Still, I was not part of this community, and I continued to come to just a handful of services each year over the next few years. During those years, I had several green repeat visitor badges, and it always irked me a bit when I showed up and my green badge had been tossed because I had not been here for a while, and I had to get a sticky name badge again. I felt like I was starting over every time because I really wanted a deeper connection to this community. And that green badge waiting here for me was kind of a symbol of that, like I was making steps and strides forward. It seems petty, I realize, because when I walked into Creeves Hall and somebody enthusiastically greeted me, or better yet, remembered me, or knew my name, that was far more important than any badge. And for a long time, only a handful of people here knew my name or anything else about me. One of them was Joe Lindsley. The other was the Reverend, and the other one was the membership director at the time. I knew that needed to change if I were going to become part of this community. I wondered, how was I going to make that happen? And why was this so important to me? In 2005, the Ikeda Center for Peace, Learning, and Dialogue asked several people whose work involves community building the question, what is community and why is it important? Frances Moore LePay shared that community, meaning for her, nurturing human connection, is our survival. We humans wither outside of community. It isn't a luxury, a nice thing. Community is essential to our well-being, and I wanted that, and I wanted it here. And Alan O'Hare shared that in the Sufi tradition, the primary purpose of life is to awaken the essence of who we are and then lovingly embrace our realization. The gift of community is that it offers each of us the fire of affirmation and the support to achieve this, even on those days when we feel no fire at all. To me, having meaningful connections to our beloved church community is life-giving. So, how did I make these connections happen? What changed after all those years? How did I move from having a green visitor badge, a white membership badge, to this lovely peach board member badge? I evolved. Two things happened. One, I was very intentional about making connections. I took some initiative. In 2013, I attended some Green Sanctuary meetings, and I also helped clean up trash along the river in DuPage. And then I participated in the fall retreat. These helped to change a lot of things. A few people then reached out to me with invitations, personal invitations, directly to me. Carolyn Bailey asked me to participate in a service that she led the November after the retreat, after she learned of my strong connections to nature as part of my spirituality. After that same day, Kelly Tromley Freitag invited me to become a worship associate, and that led me to join the Sunday Services Committee. You see where this is going. Now I was finally developing deeper connections to this church community, and in early 2014, I was ready. I was ready to become a member of this church. Membership to me meant that I was ready to attend church regularly and to do, in the words of Mitch Albom, devote myself to my community around me and to devote myself to creating something that gives purpose and meaning. Soon after becoming an official member, I joined and co-led the Social Justice Committee for a year, and I became a more regular volunteer at the PADS work that we do to feed and shelter the homeless. A group of us then formed, with the leadership of Martha, a kindred and earth-centered spirituality. And I lead a few services each year. This is another important aspect of my spirituality, which I was able to embrace here in this beloved community. Then in 2016, I was elected as the Board Trustee of Spirituality. I love that title. It sounds so lofty. And now I wear this peach-colored badge. That's how I got it. Long gone are the days of sticky-back name tags, and long gone are the days of wondering, how can I get more deeply connected to this church community? In 2017, I joined the leadership team for our PADS work, joined the steering committee for the LGBTQ and additional other letters, welcoming congregation recommitment, began teaching spirit play to little ones in our religious education program, and became the co-leader of a covenant group. Oh, and by the way, I'm also on fellowship committee. Phew, man, that sounds like a lot of work, and it is. For me, however, this is life-giving work. It's a labor of love, and I do this work gladly. As Khalil Gibran wrote, "And what is it to work with love? It is to weave the cloth with threads drawn from your heart, even as if your beloved were to wear that cloth. It is to build a house with affection, even as if your beloved were to dwell in that house. It is to sow seeds with tenderness and reap the harvest with joy, even as if your beloved were to eat that fruit. It is to change all things you fashion with the breath of your own spirit, and to know that all the blessed dead are standing about you and watching." Peace, love, and joy to you all, and thank you for being part of my family.
Now Martha Capo and Jim Wharton will sing "We Belong." The words that they will be singing are in your order of service, including the second verse that they will be singing in Spanish, translated into English.
We belong to the thunder. We belong to the sound of the words we've both fallen under. Whatever we deny or embrace, for worse or for better, we belong, we belong, we belong together. Si acaso no lo sabes, te aseguro que es verdad. El cariño que es sincero no se apaga con crueldad. Olvidas lo que fuimos y desprecias lo más bien. Juntitos presentimos que la luna herede mía. Junto a ti, solo es mi anhelo. Junto a ti como el rayo de luz que ha brillado del cielo. No importa por venir si sufrir es mi triste destino. Junto a ti hasta el fin del camino.
Close your eyes and try to sleep now. Close your eyes and try to dream. Clear your mind and do your best to try and wash the palate clean. We can't begin to know it, how much we really care. I hear your voice inside me,
And I see your face everywhere. Now I say we belong to the light, we belong to the thunder. We belong to the sounds of the words we've both fallen under. Whatever we deny or embrace, for worse or for better, we belong, we belong, we belong together. We belong, we belong, we belong together.
So now I'm going to tell you a story. It was written by Unitarian Universalist Becky Brooks. Becky lives with her 2 partners, her 2 children, and her 2 cats. I think she has something with 2s going on. She spends her time learning new things, writing stuff, and homeschooling her twins, who she says are far, far smarter than she will ever be. She also says she loves you just the way you are and all the ways you will ever be. So here's the story. Once upon a time, there was a teacher. Her name was Sophia. Sophia had been a teacher in this town that she lived for a long, long time. She had taught children, they had grown up, and she was now teaching their children. Nearly everyone in that town knew Sophia, and they loved her, not only because she was an excellent teacher, but she was a very kind person. One day, when Sophia got to work, she saw this note on her desk. The note read, "I will be around tomorrow. I wonder if I might stop by your house tomorrow afternoon. Your friend, the Breath of Life." Well, at first, Sophia thought, well, this was some kind of a joke. But the more she thought about it, she realized if it was a joke, it wasn't really very funny. She couldn't think of anyone who'd want to play this kind of joke on her. And if it wasn't a joke, What if the breath of life was really coming to her house tomorrow? Sophia should at least get ready just in case. So on her way home, she stopped by the store and bought some welcome mats. You know, those big mats that you put in front of your front door that just say welcome across the front. And she put it right there in front of her door. And she got home and she started cleaning from top to bottom. She brought in fresh flowers to put on the table. She cleaned and cleaned until everything seemed to sparkle. In the morning, she realized she didn't know what the breath of life liked to eat, or even if it ate at all. So she baked some bread and made a casserole and some fruit salad and baked some cookies. And then she thought, what about a beverage? Does the breath of life drink? And so she thought, maybe I'll make some hot tea, and maybe I'll make some cold tea. But what if they don't like tea? I'll make some lemonade too. She thought she would make all the things that she could think of that the breath of life might like to eat. She was so nervous. She didn't know what to expect. Just as she finished putting the tea together, putting the lemonade in an ice-cold pitcher, she heard a knock at the door. And her heart went pat, 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 pat. She was so nervous. She took a deep breath. And she opened the door. And on the other side was the mayor of the town. And he said, "Hello, Sophia, how are you? I smelled the delicious bread you were making. I just had to have some." And she said, "Oh, I'm glad you're here. Come on in, come on in. I was just expecting some very important visitor, and I thought maybe you'd like to meet him. Please come in. Make yourself at home." And so Sophia sat down with the mayor, and they started talking, and then there was another knock at the door. Knock, knock. And her little heart went pat, 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 pat again. She started to get nervous, took a deep breath, and then she opened the door. On the other side was the class of her children that she was teaching. And they said, "Hello, Miss Sophia. We were walking by and we smelled the cookies and we just had to have some." And she said, "Oh, come in, come in. I'm glad you're here. I was expecting a very important visitor that you might like to meet. Please come in and make yourself at home. Have some cookies." Well, the children and the mayor started talking. The children had some very important things they wanted to advise the mayor about the city. When another knock, knock, knock came at the door, and Sophia's heart went again, pat, 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 pat. And again, she took a deep breath and opened the door. And it was all the women from her chalice circle from church. "Hello, Sophia. We heard the tea kettle and laughter, and we thought you were having a party." And Sophia said, "Oh, I'm glad you're here. Come in, come in. I'm expecting a very important visitor who you might like to meet. Please come in and make yourself at home." All afternoon, people stopped by, lured by the yummy smells and the sounds of laughter and joy. The townspeople filled her home and her backyard and her front yard and her upstairs, and it just overflowed onto the neighbor's yard. And people got hungry, and so people said, "Well, let me go make some food and bring it back." And they made dinner, and they ate and played and had a great party. They played games and played music, and it was just wonderful. Sophia had such a nice time that she completely forgot about her very important guest. Even as she waved goodbye to her friends at the end of the night, all she felt was contentment at having had such a great party. In the morning, though, Sophia woke up and remembered everything. She was confused. What happened to the breath of life? Why didn't they show up? All during her walk to work, she tried to figure out what had happened. Along the way, people smiled at her. "Great party, thanks." And she thought to herself, she really should do that again sometime. And she got to work, and there was something on her desk. "Oh my gosh," she said. "What is it?" It was another note. It said, "Dear Sophia, I had a wonderful time yesterday. The bread was delicious, the cookies were divine. Tea mixed with lemonade is my new favorite drink. Thanks for being such a wonderful host. I hope we can do it again soon. Love, the breath of life." We'll talk a little more about Sophia in just a minute, but I want to share something with you first. This is what is called the ark of belonging. People come to the church for the first time through the door, or second time, or third. They're new. As time passes and they feel a sense of belonging to the church, they begin to get involved, joining groups, maybe getting on a committee. And then, the longer they're here, they want to give back. They want to get more deeply involved. They might get on the board or become a chair of a committee. And then what? We'll talk about that. Sophia's story made me wonder how we treat the person at the very far end of the spectrum there. How do I greet someone I don't know? A person I've never met, wasn't expecting that they were going to come. I wondered, would I ask the same questions that Sophia asked? I have to admit, I'm a little nervous sometimes when I meet someone I've never met before. And do I always say, like she does, that she wants to make everyone who comes in her home feel that they are welcomed and cared for? You know, all the people who come to our church for the first time come here for a reason. Perhaps something traumatic has happened in their life. Perhaps they want a place for their children to develop a moral and or ethical, spiritual or religious understanding of the world. Perhaps they need a place to feel that they're no longer alone in this chaotic world. Perhaps some of them are looking for like-minded people that they can join. Perhaps they want a place where they can feel safe to explore their own personal spiritual journey. They come here for a reason. They come here perhaps thinking this place is a place where they will find healing, safety, hope, community, peace, engagement. You know, all of us came through the door for the first time at one time or another. Do you remember that time? Do you remember how it felt, what you experienced? I've come to believe it's important for me to remember my first time and how I felt as I first walked into the door. A little anxious, a little afraid. You know, I've heard other people say that too, that the first time they come into the church as visitor, that they're a little scared, a little anxious, unsure of what to expect, unsure how we'll be. You know, many people now come into the church after having looked at our website and listened to a couple of sermons or read something about us. But that's not like being here in reality, being with these people sitting in this sanctuary, their children being in our RE program. I am happy to say that I think we do a pretty good job welcoming people to our church. I commend the greeters, and actually I commend all of you. And I just say one last thing about that. Sometimes the people that come into our church need a little TLC, a little kindness, a little compassion. It's important for us to keep that in mind. The visitor relations team we have here is great. I want to shout them out. They've talked at one time or another about the idea of having someone walk into the sanctuary with the person that's here for the first time. You know, I've been at other churches where they've done that, and it's really made a huge difference. In one church, there was this congregant. She was a great old lady. She made it her personal mission to seek out any new person that came in the door and sit with them the entire service, actively finding out everything about their life. And then the next time they came, she made a point of greeting them so that they know that they would meet somebody that they already knew when they got there. What would it be like if we did that here, all of us? Made the intentional effort. If we saw somebody new walking in the door, they had the little sticky name tag on, as we heard, if you didn't know, and we walked up to them and just started talking to them. You know, tell me about yourself. What brings you here today? Really made them feel welcomed. That we really wanted them to be here. And I know we can do this. I've seen you do this on Sunday mornings. After the service, when I ask you to turn around and greet one another, you do a great job. You greet one another, you greet the new people, you help them feel like we're really enthusiastic about your being here. We're happy that you're here. How can we help you feel like you belong? Encourage, keep up that good work. It really does make a difference. It does help people feel like this could be a home for them. But there are some people, and we've seen them here, who come in on Sunday mornings, and they come in quietly, and they sit in the back on the side, and then as soon as the service is over, they go out and they walk straight out the church, never talking to anybody. I'm not saying grab them and say, let's have a talk about your life. They need to do that. They need to sit quietly and observe. They're cautious, maybe introverted. They're considering if this is a community they can belong to. They may not interact with any of you, at least the first few times. But they watch. They listen. They consider what happens in worship. They go out to Creeves Hall, and if they stay at all, they don't usually talk to anybody. They drink a cup of coffee quietly. They listen. They hear what people say. Do they hear, sometimes, people complaining? Or do they hear people joyfully engaging with one another? Do they hear people who seem angry or defensive? Or do they hear people treating each other with kindness and respect? I can tell you they listen. They listen to what people here say about this church, about me, the minister, about the leadership here. They listen, and then they consider whether this could be a home for them or not. And if they decide it is, and then they become a little more involved. And they usually get more involved with one or more aspects of the church. Maybe they join a committee, or they attend a covenant group or chalice circle, or a book study, or an affinity group, or something here at the church. All of you do that. I've seen everyone here involved in something at one time or another. And many times not on Sundays at all, coming into the church during the week. At any given time when I come here, there's at least one church member in the building doing something for the betterment of this community. And so I offer you a suggestion. As you volunteer, as you do things here in this church, use it as a way to learn more about yourself. Step back from your experiences helping, recruiting, serving, and reflect. What did you learn about yourself as you did this? How can what I'm doing here help me grow as a person while I serve the church? I also know that many of you, before coming to this church, have not necessarily served on any kind of committee or board or taken on that kind of responsibility. And that's really okay. We have lots of people who can mentor you here, advise you, help you. You'll discover you don't have to do anything single-handedly, and you don't have to know everything about how this church works to help to serve this church. There are so many things you'll learn about yourself and your capacities, your capabilities, and you might even find as you do things at the church that you realize you have new talents that you didn't even know you had before. So I say get involved in a way that works for you, and don't just do that. Don't just leave it on the table. Reflect on that involvement and what you can learn from it and how you can grow from it. Now, before I go to the next stage, I want to talk a little bit about burnout. Nobody here has ever gotten burned out, so you'll never relate to this, but there's a secret about burnout. There's a reason why people who get over-involved or become board presidents can disappear from the life of the church. It's not because the work is all that intense or the volume of the work is too much. It's because all they do when they come to church is work. And they don't get their spiritual, intellectual, social, or emotional needs met any longer. Every time they come into the church, these long-term members, these involved people talk to them about the work of the church. Are we going to buy a new toilet for the men's bathroom? Why is the membership page so hard to get on? I don't like the minister. What are you going to do about it? If we treat our board members or our volunteers as if they were staff every time they walk in the building, can you blame them if they start to feel spiritually empty? Can you blame them if they feel like they can't turn to this community when they are going through their own personal troubles or crisis? When somebody asks me about becoming a board member, I usually say to them, okay, don't worry about the work so much. You can do that. But if you do it, take care of yourself. Set boundaries. Be able to say something to the people who come up to you wanting to engage you in some kind of problem. I'm happy to talk with you about this. Could we set up a time to talk about it sometime later? I need to go into worship today. Good boundaries make for good self-care, make for long-lasting, happy, spiritually fed volunteers and leaders. And finally, we come to the last on the arc. Once someone leaves an area of responsibility here, they're either the board member or they've been working on several committees or, like my panel back here, they reach a point where that responsibility is no longer there. So what do? They're no longer the board president. They're no longer serving on a bunch of committees or chairing a bunch of committees. Well, what I'd say to them is take a step back. Spend a year or so without being the head of a committee or a board chair or board president, or step back and fill your cup. Fill yourself spiritually, emotionally, socially. Maybe participate in a chalice circle or covenant group or spiritual direction group. And during that time, try to figure out how you fit into the life of the church now that you are no longer in responsibility, no longer a leader in the church. Asking yourself, what do I need to do now? Who do I need to be in this church now? And perhaps as you do, you'll find that you want to do something completely different than leadership, at least for a while, as you kind of process what you're going to be and begin to live in this new role, no longer a leader. You can learn so many things during that time. You're just stepping back and figuring out, who am I? How do I belong to the church now? During these time, you can try on new roles, new ways of being with others, maybe practice setting boundaries, trying on new tasks, and not having to be perfect. You can do things and make huge mistakes. It's great. This is a safe place to do that. It's really an opportunity to grow as a person and to learn so much more about yourself. And we provide so many opportunities for that. Back to Sophia's story. Remember what she said when people came in the door? I'm so glad you're here. Come in, come in. I'm expecting a very important person who you might want to meet. Please come in. Make yourself at home. What if each Sunday morning, as we come into the church, each of us, we say that? Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Come in, come in. I'm expecting somebody very important that you might want to meet. Please come in and make yourself at home. What would happen if we did that? And who would that important person be? Well, it might be a visitor, someone brand new to the church who doesn't know anything about us and just wants to get to know us. It might be someone who's involved in the life of the church, but who might need our support, our care, our compassion, our love. Or it might be somebody who has been deeply involved in the life of the church and is in that process of redefining who they are and how they belong to this community. Might be you. Or maybe it is you.
The root of the word bless has as its grounding the idea of to speak well of or to praise. In a sense, to bless someone can be to give them thanks, to appreciate the very fact of their being. As Bernadette Burns tells us, we bring our myriad of talents, ideas, needs, and styles here. Yet within this diversity, there is a common bond between us. We love this fellowship, and we are willing to work together to improve and strengthen this community of ours and our lives. As Unitarian Universalists, we travel together on a search for meaning, having come from many different places and bringing many different gifts to share for the journey. Bless those who bring the gift of courage. Bless those who bring the gift of love. Bless those who bring the gift of curiosity. Bless those who bring the gift of hospitality. I'd now like you to turn to your neighbors, to face one person at a time with focus and attention, and to give and receive the message, thank you for your gifts. If you choose not to participate out loud, you are welcome to fold your hands and close your eyes in meditation, and know that your neighbors will appreciate you from afar. In any case, please hear that I thank you for your gifts. Please now bless one another.
As we appreciate the myriad gifts all of us bring to this church, we also appreciate your contributions to the continued well-being of this church. The offering will now be taken and gratefully received.
And now it's time for us to extinguish our chalice. But let us carry its flame in our hearts, reminding us of our fourth principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. I invite you to rise in body or spirit, and let's sing hymn number 1074 in the Teal hymnal, Turn the World Around. The words will be projected to your left. I offer these words as we close today. They were written by the Unitarian Universalist minister down the road at Hinsdale, Reverend Pamela Romancic. Why, community? To remember that one is not a whole number, that we need both roots and wings, that strength comes from relationships and mutuality, that we know life in and through one another. Now I invite you to turn around and greet one another. Let us share the love of this community.